Okay, thank you. Good evening. This is Tuesday, March 18th, and this is the planning board meeting. We have a quorum. Jennifer will be sitting in tonight as a voting full member with the rest of us. So is there a motion to open the meeting?
Motion?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we're underway. Our first item is a public hearing. This is for Feldman, 97 Random Farms Drive. This is an application for a site development plan approval to amend the clearing and grading limit lines.
I'm hoping it's gonna stay up and I don't kick it over. Good
Yes.
evening,
Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
Motion?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
good evening, my name is Stephanie Fox, I'm the architect for Veronica and Jared Feldman at 97 Randoms Farm Drive. I'm not sure if you've all had the opportunity to review the narrative that I provided, but I figured I'd just give you a quick overview.
Yep. Terrific.
So this project started back in 2021, where we made an application to the building department to construct a new deck, a patio with a fireplace, and replace some existing fencing and do some improvements. We knew that there were wetlands on the property, so we were referred to the ERB in order to get a wetlands permit. So in May 2021, we made the initial application. The board reviewed the application and then requested that we provide a wetlands mitigation plan. Over the course of the next several months, we worked with Paul Janig, who's a wetlands consultant, to prepare a mitigation plan. And we went back to the board in February of 2022. At that meeting, the project was discussed and it was approved. Subsequently, in May of 2022, a wetlands permit was issued. Plan review continued by the building department, and after some wetlands mitigation and storm or site protections were in place, the construction commenced and a building permit application was issued in September of 2022. Then over the course of the next several months, construction ensued, and then in May of 2023, we made an application for a certificate of occupancy. At the end of May, a final inspection was performed. Mr. DePaul came out and he made some additional requirements that a handrail be installed to the back patio steps, and he asked for elevation drawings of the fireplace. I will say that there was a bit of a gap after that, it took some time to get the handrail installed, and I did have a personal issue that kind of took me away from things, so there was a little bit of a gap there. And then back in September of 2024, we submitted as-built drawings of the fireplace and photos of the handrail. I guess upon further review, it was determined that there wasn't a great amount of inspection done for the construction of the patio and the fireplace. So the engineering department required that we get a certification letter from an engineer. That letter was provided earlier this year in February. And then we thought we were done, but then we were notified by Mr. Gaspar that we needed a clearing and grading line adjustment, which to my understanding was probably the first thing that we really should have done, but somehow it slipped through the cracks. And so we're here now, and so what are we asking for? On the site plan here, this dark blue line represents the existing clearing and grading limit line that was approved back in I think 1991 when the subdivision was approved. As you can see, the red dotted line which goes, around the limits of the already constructed patio, represents where we would like the new grading limit line be, and that includes an increase of about 1,145 square feet. As you can see, The patio's been constructed, the deck's been constructed, and it's been in place for, we're going on almost 2 years now. It's really, they did a good job, it's beautiful. Also, I should also mention that all the wetlands mitigation that was required by the ERB has been completed and inspected and approved.
Okay. So, I think our lines are a little bit different on one of the plans I'm looking at anyway. So, on this one, the dotted orange lines, are they what used to be the clearing and grading limit lines, and now the new one is this solid blue?
Say that again?
Are the dotted,
So
that
this
was a
is,
restriction, that was a buffer line. This is what you're proposing now, the solid blue, is the clearing and grading limit line?
no, so this is the pre-construction
It's this drawing, right?
survey, yes.
Yeah, this blue is what was approved,
So yeah, this
and
is,
the red is the proposed.
that's a pre-construction survey, which showed like the wetlands flagging and so forth, so it's actually the last page of this one here.
Oh, that, okay, I'll look at those.
So blue is the old one from 91.
Right.
It looks like the existing deck had already penetrated it.
Yep.
And then the new addition
Just bumps it out.
just bumps it out.
Okay.
And I'm assuming that this is the square footage being added, the 1100 and change.
Correct, in that red sort
That
of,
teardrop shape.
Okay. Okay, Sabrina, you had some thoughts, memo on this?
Good evening, board. Yes, Mr. Chairman, I did put together a memo for you. It was partially my office's to blame for not catching the clearing and grading limit line earlier, but because of our internal processes of needing to attend the ERB, go to the ERB for a permit, they were required to do the adequate mitigation that you would be requiring in an instance such as this. In total, there is a 1,145 square foot change to the clearing and grading limit line, which has been mitigated per the ERB. Some of the additional hardscape that is on the property was required by the ERB. So, so this plan is actually pretty well put together. It's been reviewed by the town, it's been reviewed by the ERB. Adequate mitigation has been made, which is why we put it on as a public hearing tonight, because the encroachment in the clearing line is very minimal considering what they were trying to do. In looking back at the original subdivision, the clearing and grading limit line was very close to the actual house. So this really puts the property in perspective and does designate an adequate clearing and grading limit line to separate the activity from the wetland.
the only other thing I would just piggyback on that is that the design of the deck and of the patio has not changed since the original application from the ERB. It hasn't increased in size or anything like that, it's really just stayed consistent. And it wasn't even like in construction, it's like, sometimes it's like, can we make it a little bigger? None of that occurred, it was built to spec.
Right. And my understanding is that the applicant conformed with all of the requirements of ERB and everything is fully in place at this point. So it seems to me it's just a formal confirmation of what really exists out there at this point. Okay. Does anyone have any questions, issues?
No, I'm okay.
Okay. Is there a motion to close the public hearing then?
Motion to close?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have a resolution before us that was prepared. Any questions or issues on the resolution?
No.
Oh, I would note the applicant's name is Jared, in the first whereas clause, Jarett. It's misspelled, that's all.
Thank you for that.
Okay, very good. Okay, very good. If not, is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
Motion?
Second?
Second.
As amended, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, as amended, thank
amended.
you.
As amended.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Motion's carried, resolution's approved, you're all set.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you, you too.
Stephanie runs behind everyone here. Okay, we move now to our next item. This is an informal appearance before the board. This is the Twin Ridges Road, Giori, application for a site plan development approval, wetlands permit, and tree removal permit. We last heard this in November 19th.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Keith Potensky. I'm the attorney for the applicant. I have here with me this evening Mr. Jory on behalf of the applicant, Tessa Hakaita, the project engineer, Tracy, our landscape architect, and Steve Danzer, our environmental consultant. At the last meeting in November, you probably recall there were several comments from this board and its consultants, which we did our best to respond to in our last submission. There were some recent staff memos that we received. As a reminder, this is an application for a single-family residence. The residence does require area variances. We need a 280A variance due to the fact that Twin Ridges Road is a private road, not a public road. And also the proposed residence does not meet the front yard setback with respect to Woods Lane, which is a paper street. So we do need to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Before we do that, we were hoping to just get some sort of acknowledgement from this board that the location of the residence is acceptable, because the front yard setback is based on the location of the residence. So we need that before we can go to the zoning board. And we're happy to answer any additional questions that the board has tonight in response to the submission that we submitted. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sabrina, do you want to tackle your memo?
Sure, for the board's information, this, hang on a second, let me find it. In my memo, I included a kind of a history of the site and its approvals, its expirations, and kind of where it's been since 1990. For the board's background information. This application before us is a new application. It will receive direct wetland impacts. It will include disturbance within the wetland buffer setback, and it will involve the removal of trees. The subject property contains wetlands. The plans indicate 100 feet where 150-foot setback for wetlands is required. The applicant indicated that, or the plan set indicates there will be 17,690 square feet of land disturbance within the wetland buffer. The applicant is proposing a 28,935 square feet of invasive species removal and 2,727 square feet of planting within the wetlands buffer, so there is some mitigation. However, it does not meet the mitigation requirements of Chapter 137, and I'm sure Dennis can speak more to that, but our code does require 1.5 to 1 replacement, wetland replacement. So the mitigation plan really needs to identify that 1.5 to 1 and that it meets with the requirements of the town code. There's always been a discussion, my comment number 5 relates to the 2,770 square foot home and driveway. The planning board had requested the applicant to examine a redesign of the lot to lessen the impact on the wetland system. The applicant provided the environmental assessment of relocating the septic system, and per the applicant, the alternative septic location did not appear to be significantly better than the proposed location of the septic system. One very large change that has occurred recently and is affecting all applications within the town when wetlands are involved is New York State DEC's new wetland regulations. There is a process that DEC has set forth where they are asking applicants to submit to them so the DEC can make a determination of jurisdiction or get a letter of jurisdiction from the DEC because they will require you to make changes or approve or disapprove your application. So in the past, we had one other application before you that involved DEC wetlands and wetlands permits. And if you recall, before the planning board really dug into approving the site of the house and the driveway and the access to the house, you required that applicant to go to DEC and find out what DEC wanted them to do. So in this instance, I would advise the planning board to advise the applicant to get that DEC wetlands permit or that determination of jurisdiction before you guys determine where that house should be. And that's my comments for tonight.
Okay, thank you, Sabrina.
Sure.
Dennis, do you wanna tackle your
Can
memo?
I ask Sabrina
Sure,
a question? Sabrina, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
This is just a clarification, in your comment number 2, where you talk about the 17,000 of land to be disturbed within the buffer, and then the
Yeah.
proposal of 28,900 invasive species to be removed, is that in addition? So is it 17,000 and 28,000 square feet of land being disturbed, or is the 17,000 within the 28,000?
I can't answer that, that's a question for the applicant.
Oh, okay, great, hopefully we'll ask you guys when you come up. Okay, thanks Sabrina.
Well,
Yeah.
I wanna follow up on that also, Sabrina, because you recommended that the plans be redrawn with 150-foot buffer lines.
Correct.
And I wonder whether any of these statistics will change when we actually see 150 feet rather than 100 feet on the plan. It may be that they already cross over to such a degree that we don't see much or any difference. But I think first of all, the plans should be drawn accurately to show the 150 foot, and that should be drawn accurately before it is submitted to New York DEC.
Yes, DEC should understand that we do have a 150-foot wetland setback in this area. And that's different from any type of septic regulation.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, Dennis, you had some thoughts and comments?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess we're gonna go from low to high. So looking at sheet 2 of 8, I just, had some comments about, I guess, that when you showed the different areas that you broke down, which was fine, what constituted the mitigation areas, just asking that maybe the acreages get broken down for each area, because I think that might help flesh out some of the merits that everybody's been throwing around in order to determine what is being disturbed and what constitutes mitigation. And I also just include for that, obviously considering the environment, you're gonna need herbivory protection of any new plantings that you put in that area. On sheet 3 of 8, I think again, just kind of referring to some of the numerics and clarifications of the 150-foot buffer. Just asking for a little bit more of that. This way, because like the way that summary table reads, it was, highlighting 27 square feet of wetland enhancement. And then there's the on-site mitigation of removals at over 28,000 square feet. But then there's the roadway, which is that included in that number, that is outside of the site, but it's still within the wetlands buffer. So all these paragraphs just kind of, I think, get to that same point. Moving on to the seed mixes that you were proposing, which is fine, I'm familiar with New England wet mix. It would be nice though to know what species are being considered. Maybe what natives happen to exist that were mentioned but not specifically listed with respect to the investigation of the wetland mitigation areas. And then to supplement seeding, I think you need to consider, some plant plugs going in the area, because it's just gonna take time for just that seed to germinate. You need a little bit of supplementation there. moving on to the tree removal, so, you know, this is an undeveloped property, so, you know, when it comes to evaluating trees, I wanted to lay out, you know, specifically what the town does and does not regulate. So a dead tree, regardless of where it appears, the code is pretty clear that, yes, you could remove a dead tree without requiring a permit. But, you know, when you get to defining what is considered a hazardous tree, that assessment is certainly different in the middle of a woodland as opposed to, you know, on top of a house or a driveway. So that's why proposing to maybe not replace poor condition trees, I think that's open for interpretation, and I would encourage that if the tree is still living, that is something that, you know, would be required for replacement in this environment. And I just tried to highlight and attach for an example when you know, in a case with myself and another colleague back whenever, had to do you know, a biological assessment, like that those types of trees for an undeveloped site were important biologically. In this case, it was Indiana bed, but I'm just saying that is something to consider. It's, you know, it's sometimes tough to mix and match. It's like I always say, you know, we don't go around looking at wetlands as drowning hazards and have to fence them in. There is a separation, and the same here really applies for the trees, so that's why I just kind of laid that out. As far as the replacement plan, there seemed to be a division on the plans as to what would be considered landscape property that would support, you know, just the regular usage and being able to get around, you know, what would be considered the property, and then what obviously will not be part of like a maintained turf cover or a landscape, and there was obviously plantings proposed in those areas. And I think that is a fair line in the sand to separate what would be counted as mitigation, but really wouldn't serve to duplicate to meet tree replacement as well. But any of those plantings that were to occur either in the, you know, foundation beds of the home or on the property in general that is going to be maintained, those are the trees that, you know, certainly would count as tree replacement, because those environments wouldn't be wetland mitigation. So I think there is at least a common dividing line there that I can understand.
And Dennis, we have the same situation as we often see in other applications where wetland mitigation does not count toward the tree replacement, if that's part of the wetland mitigation.
Right.
So we have to keep that separate.
Right, yeah, it's hard to, that's why these sites get a little more difficult, because you shouldn't get double credit, because then it really does pave the way to just say, well, why even have one set of the ordinance anyway. As far as the replacement plan, I just had some questions, I guess, regarding the calculations, because all I had to reference really was the original application form that was submitted back in November, and I just couldn't get the numbers to match up in terms of the DBHs considered for replacement and then the subsequent number of trees, so I just asked to clarify that. And since there were a lot of common names, I know you mentioned that you're not, could be acceptable, not including invasive species as part of those replacement calculations. It's just not clear from that application form if there's any invasive species for consideration, so I just need more detail on, you know, what is proposed for removal. And then the last is, you know, this was kind of information for the applicant, for the board, that yes, DEC as of New Year's Day this year, the landscape has certainly changed. And I just wanted to share, you know, for illustrative purposes, why Newcastle and a lot of the wetlands that don't appear on New York State DEC freshwater wetland maps, which they are sunsetting as a regulatory tool and obviously will still use as a resource tool, that if there are properties that are still within those mapped areas, yes, DEC will certainly regulate those as freshwater wetlands. But if your property does not appear overlapping a DEC freshwater wetland, it's not used to eliminate that you don't need a permit. So you need to go through this JD process with them, that if there are wetlands, they could be another regulatory agency that would require a permit. And for my, you know, attendance at the webinars and speaking with their staff, I included in the memo the two criteria that fall under wetlands of unusual importance that would trigger a lot of the wetlands in Newcastle, like as an example, Getney Pond now, we're gonna need a wetlands permit to do the hydro raking in the fall, which if we did it last year, we would not have needed a DEC permit. So even the town has been, subject to those changes as well.
Dennis, in item 2, is the urban area Millwood that they're referencing? It says those, if you look at the second bullet,
Yes,
close to an urban area, is it Millwood there?
it's not necessarily Millwood, because they further define urban areas, how do they do this? That's the watersheds.
Well, the map on your page
Oh,
6 is rather broad.
it's a mapping, but it's defined by the US Census Bureau.
Yeah.
So that's however they do it, that's all I could say, yeah. I never even volunteered to actually interview people for the census. I have friends that did, but I have no idea how all that works. So that's, I kind of just summarized that, that's obviously the applicant's gonna have to engage with DEC. They only regulate a 100-foot adjacent area, so I don't think they're gonna be concerned with our extra 50-foot regulation for the environmental protection overlay district. But, obviously the site, the roadway, it's encumbered by, a lot of wetlands per the delineation, so, their mitigation plan, I'm imagining is gonna be, similar in terms of, what's gonna have to be offered to offset this. And I also, wanna let the applicant know that maybe more so than has been completed to this point, when you need permits from the DEC and the Corps, you need to be prepared with an alternatives analysis. You can't just plop it on the table and say, okay, can we or can't we? So you're gonna have to go through that exercise to show why a house of a different orientation, a smaller size, less bedrooms, propped up on stilts, whatever, is not conducive to this location. And that's my recommendation from all my years in consulting prior to taking this job, but I just offer that as a piece of advice. And that does it for my comments.
And another issue is consistent with what we did recently with the other application. The application to DEC, we would like to see a copy of that. One of the issues that we have here is the 150-foot overlay district is not something that we just picked out of the sky. The town many years ago decided that the overlay were lands that were more sensitive to steep slopes and wetlands, and that's why the buffers were drawn to be bigger. So it's not just that there is an arbitrary line that's 50 feet further from a wetland, there were reasons behind it. And it's important for us to make certain that that is communicated one way, either with the application or through public comment, once the application's in the throes of review.
Right, and there is a public comment period that DEC would have on the application, so that would be appropriate.
Okay.
And there's actually language in the town code that when we talk about the environmental overlay district, that gives the justification for it from an environmental standpoint, so the language is there.
Yep. Good. Thank you, Sabrina. Bob, you had some comments?
Just a few. Had about 50 in total. I'm not going over all 50. I'll break them into big categories. Substantially, the stormwater report is incomplete. They're using 3 types of SMPs. They're using vegetated swales, permeable pavers, rain gardens. None of those have been 100% demonstrated to see if they're even feasible through deep test holes and percolation rates. They also have to do corings and corings in the roadway itself to make certain that it can withstand H25 loading for the fire trucks. One important note is I met with Bart Carey, the commissioner, and he felt, and I agree with him, a different layout for the water main as opposed to cutting across and going up Woods Lane. He felt it would be more beneficial to have the water main keep its location within the right of way and the roadway pavement of Twin Ridges Road, so the hydrant would be more visible in case of an emergency. So we mentioned that to the applicant's engineer, they felt it was a good idea, they're actually gonna save some distance, probably about a couple of 100 feet in the water main. So that was one big change in the plan, which I think would benefit the fire department, is if they put it down Woods Lane, it's actually totally overgrown and wooded and a paper street, and no one would even see the hydrant at the end anyway. So that was one big change we decided to recommend to the applicant. Also, too, this property is wholly located within East Hudson watershed. And I think it would be worthwhile and highly advisable that they get a no jurisdiction letter from the DEP to make certain that they do not require a SWIP based on the New York City rules and regulations under chapter 18-39. Also too, I know when I spoke to the county, but I think they should get maybe something in writing, that when I originally spoke to representatives of the county health department, they said they were approving the septic with the condition of the water main. But I think we should get two things, Mr. Chairman. The plans that the county did approve, so we can correlate them to what they're submitting to the board. And all of that should be in email and correspondence from either the assistant commissioner or Zoe Thane. So the planning board knows exactly where the county is coming from. And I strongly agree with the board and Sabrina and Dennis that this is very similar to Bach. But I think before we do anything, probably all these 50 comments that I have with the analysis and deeps and perks and coring, that they go to the DEC and get approval from the DEC first and foremost. And those are my comments for this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Questions, comments from board members?
There was a lot of in your memo revised, approved, and then in this memo, incomplete. So I would suggest, given the amount of incomplete, that maybe you guys have a conversation directly with Bob to make sure that on the next submittal, it's acceptable to him, just for a brevity of getting this through this process.
I did have a conversation, actually almost 2-hour conversation on the phone with Tessa, and we did go over these comments. So we'll see how that goes when they resubmit, and I'll recheck it against my comments.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, but at the same token, we do have some takeaways here that are, I think, very important for the applicant before they spend more time and more money on these comments that you hear from Dennis and Sabrina and from Bob and maybe from board members. And that is, again, redraw the lines and rework things with 150-foot wetland setback rules. Get us the information that Bob mentioned toward the end there about the Westchester County approval. There's all kinds of mixed information here about a 40-foot setback and what they were originally approving. Is it in fact approved? Has it been approved? I mean, something that was approved 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever, that's lapsed. My understanding is those approvals are good for a year. So if people are talking about approvals, is it really an approval or is it an anticipatory approval? Is it something that's been approved in the last year? And if so, where and what's the situation? You heard about the getting the letter from the New York State DEC, the approval, so we talked about that, and of course the no jurisdiction letter from New York City DEP. I mean, these are sort of important things that you really have got to take care of before you start spending a lot of time, effort, and money, frankly, with us and on some of our details, which may be completely inappropriate based on what we hear from DEC, Westchester County, or the DEP. So I mean, I just think it would be far better for you guys and for us as well, to Jeff's point, rather than just looking at something that's incomplete time and time again. They can stay incomplete, but you really need to tackle those other 4 items.
Well, if I may.
Do you wanna address those? Yeah, because
Yes.
you're liaising directly with the agencies.
I was directly communicating with them, so let's say in terms of all these approvals, we are getting into this catch-22. It cannot be approved, we are at the last basically staged with Westchester County Health Department, they would approve it, but town, according to their regulations, planning board needs to first approval and recommend, basically to the Westchester County that yes, let's say water main would be approved and we need to submit together to the Westchester County with the water main extension. And now we're talking about water main and that's why we have this meeting. We want to move forward, but we cannot really get approvals unless the planning board first basically okays water main and then once we have the water service, then Westchester County will approve and issue permit, and that's essentially what town's engineer was saying. He talked to the Westchester County and they are waiting for you guys to act, in order for them to act, because that's their code and
we can't act
regulation.
until the DEC looks at it and gives you a permit to move forward. So I guess, there's a pecking order, of course, and there's something that can be done at the same time.
So
But the DEC, it seems to me, is the first item. We have to make sure we did that, have that set.
So DEC is, I'm not sure, actually this is like it was stated as it's a new code after New Year's. I don't know what's their requirement, whether they need, so this is going to be their determination, whether we have to submit anything to them or they will say, no, you don't need to provide, and it's not our jurisdiction, or it's the acreage is too small, or we don't, whatever that would be. When it comes to DEP, we have this letter from DEP, but we talked about it with the town's engineer that he wanted a renewed letter. So the letter before stated that it's okay as long as you're keeping 100 feet to the septic. They came to the site, they acknowledged that there is some kind of a water course. There's this letter that was sent to the planning, but it's 2016. So we have to assume that the letter will state exactly the same, but it's going to be a newer letter. So in terms of in terms of this project, again, it's something that should not be really holding us back. We'll get that letter.
We can't make the assumptions that a 2016 letter is still valid at this time. There might be changes. Just as you had an approval back in 1991, under all different kinds of rules and regulations, that doesn't apply either. So, since that time, we've gone from a 40-foot to a 100-foot to a 150-foot wetland setback over the years. The county has changed their regulations with regard to sewage disposal. The DEC obviously has changed their regulations, and unfortunately for you and for us, it's kind of like a learning experience to see what this means on this application. But I don't think that this board can just say, well, we're gonna move forward and start to hear on all these details, not having the confidence, not the confidence, but the information from DEC, from DEP, and from the county, letting us know that we can move forward. We had something very similar to this recently with DEC, and the applicant went and got the permit, and from there we were able to move forward.
Okay, but also we kind of wanted to just have an understanding. That's what we were coming to, to those meetings, how we should, widen the road, and where if the planning board would have a problem with this location or that location. We also wanted to have actually established site plan before we start getting definite approvals, and then planning board will say, well, no, like we actually don't like this way and we want this way. So everyone would have to be on the same page, at least in terms of what's acceptable for them.
Well, I think another issue that we've had is looking at real alternatives, real options. Now, we have, I think, in here a submission from one of your environmental person who said that, the two different septic sites, there's really no advantage from one to the other. I heard from Sabrina that, we still haven't seen, you guys have probably done it internally, haven't seen a real analysis of what happens with a smaller building, to Dennis's point, smaller building, less bedrooms, etc. What happens? Where can we do this?
We actually did submit that plan in 2020, I think, so we're just not resubmitting on ongoing basis those alternatives, and we evaluated what happens, so the development is and square footage of impervious surface that we're adding is one number, which is whatever 2,000 or in fact 2,700 is probably the floors, so it's floor
Mhm.
square footage. But the house that we are proposing is, let me see,
The footprint,
the footprint, yes, the
I'm assuming
footprint.
is at least half the size.
Yeah,
It's 2,770 square feet.
That's the
it's
footprint.
not, it's the footprint.
That's the
Yeah.
total
Floor
square
area.
footage, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the footprint's probably like 1,100, 1,200 feet.
Exactly, and so there is also the minimum that could be in this district, so it's by maybe a couple, 100 or something is above the minimum, so you cannot really go and build a house of 500 square feet, because now you're going to be violating the zoning regulations and not meeting the minimum. You can't just build a shed in that district, so right, so
There's a code for minimums on your home. I'm sure Bob would know.
area, so this is floor area. Yes, so 1,500, I believe. No, actually, it's the 1,600, right? Blind. 1,600 square feet, that's a house footprint. And there is a minimum, and the minimum would be
Is the minimum the lot size and not necessarily the development size?
no, there is that number, I probably do not include in the table, but there is a certain minimum square footage of the house. So also it could be when it comes to the bedrooms, this is floor area, 1,500, so minimum floor area is 1,500, the house footprint is 1,600. So this is not a big house. And two-bedroom house also, we compared actually in that previous submission, a house that was also not a very big house, but maybe a couple hundred square feet less in two-bedroom. And by the time, floor area or square footage of the house really doesn't say much, if it's two-bedroom.
So it's a two-bedroom house that's 2,700 feet?
No,
Okay.
it's a floor, it's the second floor has certain.
How many
amount of-
bedrooms are in the house?
Three.
Three bedrooms, and the total square footage of the house is 2,700 square feet.
No, the total square footage of the house is 1,600.
How much?
1,600,
Oh, 1,600.
1,600.
Is the total square footage of the home?
Yes, mhm.
No, that's the footprint, right?
Yeah, it's a footprint you have here.
The footprint, yes.
You have the floor area though.
The floor area means
2,770.
second floor.
Yeah, that's the
Right.
total
So you're
square
gonna
footage,
have
so it's each
2,000
floor adds up, okay.
Yes, so
So it's a
as
three-bedroom home that's 2,700 square feet and the footprint is approximately 1,600 feet.
So 27, it's considered a floor area.
Yes, yeah, I understand.
So usually that does not really contribute to let's say, adding impervious surface on the in the buffer
Yeah,
zone.
but it adds to
It's more
usage to the septic size, right?
Just
It adds to the,
septic-
it adds septics are done on bedroom counts. And a house of 2,700 feet with three bedrooms is possible. At 2,700 feet, houses start to trip into the four-bedroom area. Our concern might be that a room might get converted to a fourth bedroom. which would mean then the septic field would be undersized. So this is why I'm asking you square footage questions, because we have to take all this into consideration.
Well, I mean, it cannot be converted because I think we had some sort of like a floor plan and, you know, lots of people could do lots of things, but
Lots of
you know.
people can do lots of things, that is correct.
But then it would be illegal.
Yes, you are correct.
People do lots of things.
People do lots of things.
I don't think
But
that.
the issue from my standpoint is, I understand that you did this study in 2020. We have a new board, new members who weren't here in 2020. We need to have that information, and again, as part of the overall, because it's all tied to septic, and it's not just septic, it's also the expansion area. As we all know, this is an extraordinarily constrained lot. You know, by the time if you did a Venn diagram, Bob assures me that there is a dry area when you do a Venn diagram with the buffers, et cetera, even at 150 feet. I haven't seen that yet, but he swears it can be done. But it's a very, very constrained location. So what we need to do is, you're asking for permission to activities within these regulated areas. And it's not just a regulated area that's out in the middle of a pasture, it's actually, you know, it involves, you know, runoff and stormwater and watersheds. The you know, the DEP and whether the DEC thinks it's important or not, we don't know. So I mean, it's not just an isolated, you know, we've had many times where people sit there, they're amazed that, you know, there's a wetland, it's the middle of a pasture and it's regulated. What's the importance of that? Maybe not as much as the importance of this kind of a wetland that's in the overlay district for a reason. So it's important for us to fully understand and see it. It's not to, again, our point here is not to hold you up and also not to spend your money. Again, that's why we're really preaching to, you know, get the DEC, do it, you know, knock these things off so that you're not coming back to us and then you're completing something that we may find is irrelevant. You may have a different comment because the DEC says, no, that you can't do that, we don't want you to do that. So
Okay,
then we have to, we all change it and you waste your time and effort and more importantly, money, as important.
Yeah, like even today we learned something new, that Bob had a conversation about maybe now the water main may not be to the west of the road.
Right.
Where you had to go through that stream and the wetlands to do it there, now maybe the main goes right down the center of the road.
yes.
So those are all new things, and I think that's all part of thinking of alternates. I mean, to get the main, to widen the road and to build the house, we all know you have to take down lots of trees and you have to go into wetlands. Our job is to minimize that as much as possible to allow you to build a home, but to protect the environmental area that you are in. And we're probably gonna watch out more for the environmental area than to help you build a house, sorry, but it's what we gotta do. And I think we all agree there's a lot of sensitivity in that area. Even so much, you know, I looked on the drawings, I know there's like two 70-inch split trees out there. There's a big oak tree and a big cottonwood tree. I can't find those identified anywhere on your drawings, which leads me to believe that they may come down in the middle of construction because nobody flagged them. It's things like that we need identified.
Is
It's
that-
all the setbacks. I know we've had this issue about 40, 100, 180, 150. At the last meeting, we asked for one drawing. I think we asked you guys to do one drawing.
I think
And the
we
one
did.
drawing had all, no, that had a zoning drawing with the wrong setbacks on it, right? We asked for one drawing that had the site setbacks, the wetland setbacks, the setbacks from the New York City property, the easement that goes across with the driveway, so we could see the whole thing in its total, and we could see all your constraints. We could find that one little dry spot, which I do think is where you've located the house. I think that's the highest part, and I think that's the driest part, and that might be the perfect spot for it at the end of the day. But we need all this information to do the right thing. And I appreciate that you got approved in 91, I appreciate you got approved in 2001 and 14 and 15 and 16, but you know what? That horse has left the barn. We're starting all over new. So please don't keep bringing up all these approvals from 20 years ago because they really don't apply anymore. And
no, this
we
is
want, believe it or not,
not.
I wanna help you. I really do. I appreciate that you own the property. This is still America. You still have the right to build a home on your land. I think you mentioned before that you are gonna live there, which makes our decision a lot different. So these are the things that we need you to help us out
But
with.
it also helps us, for example, like you just mentioned, and we thought that we provided the map that shows 150 wetlands, you know,
Page number is that?
setback areas. And you are saying that we didn't, so we would like to know what exactly we should be providing, right?
Page number is that?
It's 1 of 8.
1 of 8. So 1 of 8 supposed to be the map that, you know, shows setbacks, but if we are not doing it, then
Well, let's go to 1 of 8 right now, because I could swear I see setbacks on here, but they all say 100,
oh, there's the 100.
right? The wetlands all say 100.
Yeah, it's 100.
I'll say 100.
But
100 you know, SB wetland number 2.
scale. This here. They are all.
Are you saying that's drawn to scale, but then I did nomenclature, is that right?
There's just so many hundreds.
Well, there's so many wetlands, there's so many lines, but I think it's all,
Yeah,
clear to me, it's all 100s.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. Alright, so
It's just stuff like that, right? Because then when we start to look at drawings and we see, oh, we didn't get that, and then honestly, when we saw your memo versus Bob's memo, and your memo said revised and complete, and Bob's memo said all incomplete, it's like, okay. It's kinda
Yeah,
tough for us to review
we
it,
had to,
because I don't know
right.
what's the most accurate and what's the most current.
The details.
But you could use this for DEC submission because they only regulate 100-foot adjacent areas, so it's
But
not
doesn't
all
that
over.
mislead them, because we want 150?
Well, you guys want 150, they just wanna come back with a piece of paper that says, yeah, we got our DEC permit. Oh wait, I'm on the other side of the fence now, I forgot, I'm not with you guys anymore, I'm on this side of the fence.
Let me address the DEC. Obviously, we have no problem going to DEC, obviously, we
Can you
understand.
identify yourself for the record?
Yeah, my name is Steve Danzer, soil scientist, professional wetland scientist, environmental consultant for this project. Yeah, you know, regarding DEC, yes, we all know they changed all the rules in January, kind of took us surprise. Admit myself, I'm not familiar with the new process. But just to bring you up to date, in 2021, which is, and it's now 2025 with the new process, 2021, we did get a letter from DEC saying that they were definitely not regulating it because we were like hundreds and hundreds of feet from, at the time, mapped wetland. It's very possible that they've changed their criteria. Personally, I don't think they have in this case, but it's up to them to tell us, and I have no problem, you know, going back and finding that answer. But we did in 2021, and we actually have this submitted somewhere in the records, so we'll just do it again.
Okay,
Thank you,
very
Steve.
good.
And to further comment, I'm not a GIS person, but I mentioned Getney Pond before, so the person that we're working with to do treatments on the pond, I had to alert him to this, that, you know, the town's gonna need a DEC wetlands permit for this. And he had made mention that when I called him, follow-up, he said, thank you very much, and he says, by the way, I worked up a map for you guys, because I guess he said that he was able to access the GIS, so, you know, obviously what I included here was just a, you know, like Mercator projection of New York State, just the summary blocks. And they even made mention in their website that the files, the GIS files, the shape files would be available later. So they may be available now, so, I mean, I still would require you to go through the JD process, but even before you do that, if someone is versed in GIS and you want to download what basically created these images that I put in the memo, and then maybe you could refine it to your site and see if you overlap it or not. And if you do, I think they're gonna say yes, and if you don't, then they'll likely say no. It kind of comes down to that.
Okay.
So we're kind of playing catch up too.
I admit, I have not seen your memo, no one forwarded that to me, so.
And you didn't miss much, don't worry about it.
Good. I recall taking that New York State webinar last year, and I will admit I had insufficient coffee for the webinar. But
Well,
it seems to,
Chairman, if I may, We're all lucky because tomorrow from 2 to 3, there's another webinar.
This was a longer one than that. And I think in some, they were talking about new kinds of measurements that are not just spatial but more qualitative, and they were going to dig more into what the importance of the wetland area was. So we shall see what all that means, you know. By all means though.
Cynthia can
Indulge
give you the
yourself.
information if you wanna
Yes.
dial in.
Yeah, like we had that discussion at the last meeting that there's, I think, 4 distinct wetlands and some may be more critical. I think Steve pointed out, does point out that some may be more critical than others.
Yes, oh yeah,
Based on where they flow.
sure.
And maybe that helps also with decision of where to locate things. If,
Yep.
you know, one wetland is more major than the other wetland and we move over maybe to that wetland.
I think it was based on function, and I think that's what they're moving to. Instead of just spatial, you know, we have these big giant, what is it, 13 acres or 12.7 acres or larger becomes a DEC regulated wetland,
Right, except for now,
except now.
that the unusual importance has no size
Right,
limitations.
right.
And I think that number in 2028 is supposed to drop to 7.8 or 7.4 officially.
So we'll see more areas than it might be captured.
Yes, the developers are thrilled, yep.
Because I would think it might be helpful to us, if we are gonna be looking at which wetland over what, that would be, we need to look at that live with Dennis and you guys before we can start making rulings on it.
Yep.
It'd be nice to have a better understanding of that.
Understood. And we appreciate the comments of the board. We'll certainly go back to DEC and DEP and request updated letters. In order to go back to the Department of Health, what we're hoping we could accomplish tonight is take a closer look at that water main, which Bob mentioned, and just make sure that it meets with the planning board's general approval so that we can go forward with the Department of Health approval. Since
Well, I
they're
don't
waiting
think
on
we
this
have
board.
the actual details for the water main, but I think the concept of the water main, Bob, I don't think we have any objection to the concept and the installation or the concept of the installation of a water main. Do we?
No, the only issue we see, I discussed this with Tessa, is when the water main is relocated and kept within the right of way of Twin Ridges, you still have to worry about the water service line. Now, you can solve it 2 ways. You can bring the water main up Twin Ridges Road a little bit more and put the water service line within the area of the existing driveway. But that would extend the water main up Twin Ridges to the north and east. So that's one option you might think about, Tess, because it would probably appease the planning board more so, because you wouldn't have to go through a wetlands with the service line.
Bob, what's the difference between the water line and the water main?
Water main and water line used interchangeably. Water main is usually the main, that's the responsibility of the town, which is an 8-inch DIP structure. Water service is obviously the service line, which is usually 2-inch type cable.
Oh, those are the laterals that go from the main to the homeowners?
That is correct. Water service is always the laterals, the water main, water line is usually, well, water line is confusing, it's better to call the water main, which is the main owned by the town, which is 8 inches, and the water service, the 2-inch line that goes to the principal residence.
So I know I'm going down the road here, so let's say the main's in. How do the 4 other existing residents on the street, do they eventually hook into that main? Or do they continue?
Absolutely, they have all right in the world to hook up into it. All of this property is totally located in the Newcastle.
Is that done
Consolidated waters.
is that done by them? The laterals going from the street to their house? Or is that done by the water company?
The homeowners will be responsible to do that, and they would have to get a water tapping permit from the commissioner and the water department for Newcastle. But the homeowner is responsible to install it, and the homeowner is responsible to maintain it. The only thing the town does is do the tap into the water main, which they maintain and own.
So once this main goes in, the existing residents on the street will lose their current water source and they will have to tie into this new main on their nickel?
Yes,
Okay, just wanna make sure I understand that.
yes, sir. I mean, that they're gonna get much better water, they'll get obviously very good water.
Oh, and they'll have fire protection.
Pressure will be higher, better fire protection with the hydrant, yes, it will
Okay.
definitely help not only this one house, but all the houses along that street, the private section of Twin Ridges leading up to the hydrant.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Do you have what you need?
Sure.
Yeah, so just basically, as suggested, we can extend it to the driveway, the water main, and then have service line serving the property. Or another alternative that we also thought through is extending to 550 and discussed with the town's engineer and crossing the wetlands, but the way we could construct it, crossing of the wetlands is through directional drilling. So essentially that does not cause a wetlands disturbance because it's going certain amount of feet under the wetland.
Is there a
So usually,
horizontal?
right, so usually that is not considered as a disturbance of the wetland. But of course, we're gonna come out, if that's the route we're gonna go, we're gonna come out on the other side and, be within the buffer area for the installation of this 2-inch copper line.
Would that alternative enable neighbors to hook in? Or would that just keep it on your property?
No, so this is the service line for the property, but water main, there is no any other solution that would need to be extended for.
Okay.
It's just we are talking about how far do we extend it? Do we go all the way to the driveway or we go, just to the property?
And when you say driveway, you mean the existing driveway that's there now,
And
the gravel one?
Right,
Okay.
right.
And that's where the hydrant would end up.
Yeah, and that's where the hydrant would end up, or in fact, past that, it needs to
So
be
that hydrant would
past
be-
20 feet further even. So the water main would be extended up to that point, or it could be extended, of course, water main has to be in front of the lot, so it would have to extend somewhere, at the beginning
That's
of
a
the
much better spot for the hydrant. Yeah, it's not in the woods and it even lets the people down at the end of the street tap
Right.
into it if they ever needed to tap.
Makes
Oh,
much
it's-
more sense, yeah.
Yeah, it makes more sense for the hydrant to be there, without a doubt. And I do like the idea of running the main down the middle of the existing road and not doing it 10 feet or 15 feet off in that stream. I
So
think that's a
we
good
could
idea.
prepare that kind of a water main extension, maybe we should even, I don't know how we should go about it, because we wanted to get Westchester County Health Department approval for the septic, and with the water main extension, if that would be acceptable by the board, we could actually get that approval, but water main extension is the portion that was kind of, delaying that process.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to have us to finish that process, that's what we need.
Okay, I think that's a good, action plan. I think it's best that you take that up directly with the town engineer and also the DPW commissioner. They'll know better and they'll make a recommendation to us, and of course, we'll probably accept it.
Does the pending DEC decision have anything impact on this?
Don't know.
It could.
It could, okay.
I don't work for DEC.
That's the risk.
Okay.
Okay.
Just waiting for somebody.
I mean, again, our experience with the last one, I think the DEC was actually fairly responsive. I don't know what they'll do with the new regulations. But I think it was a turnaround in 2 or 3 months. Speedy.
And it was
By
a pretty,
hope that's the
it was a
case.
complicated site too.
I remember
It wasn't a
being-
clean cut one.
Right, so it was, I wanna say more like 6 to 9 months, and the fundamental difference is that prior site, this is the 800-pound elephant in the room. That prior site had an existing, you can call it a home, basically built in a stream. It looked like an old mill, like the way they constructed it. And I believe that, I'm gonna use the term loosely again, septic. Maybe the waste receptacle was also in the wetlands. So what they were able to navigate successfully, if you think about it, is, well, you're saying we have a right to build in this footprint and to put the septic back in this footprint, because all of this, it's not a young home, right? And part of this all predates all these. So how about instead of doing that, we go to the upland section of the property and we rebuild the house and put the septic in accordance with current regulations. And this is all posted on the planning board website if you wanna look at their plans. The components of this project that ended up under GEC jurisdiction was the septic and I believe a little bit of the deck in the rear. The rest of the property was outside of DEC's jurisdiction, but because we took jurisdiction over the stream that flowed out of the DEC wetlands and DEC kind of cut it off at that point, we regulated more wetlands on that site as well. So DEC was just really looking at a septic and a little bit of a deck and some regrading in the back for that,
And
not the entire project.
And the other issue, you brought up something that's very important, I think the distinction on that property is that there was a pre-existing home, a pre-existing disposal system. Receptacle. And so there was that to start off with, whereas this property does not have that, and I think that made it easier for DEC. So be that as it may, that's just commentary,
Thank you.
means nothing. John, we did receive some correspondence from the public. I'm not gonna take it now, but it's in the record. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it.
I did, but we're not opening the public hearing.
Right. So it's in the record, so we do have it, we received it, and it'll be addressed it can be addressed again during the public hearing stage of this application.
Do those comments go to the applicant?
Yes, we received them,
Okay.
thank you.
Good, okay. Good. Anything else from members?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay. All right, we'll see you whenever.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, thanks. Okay, we have the minutes. We have the minutes from the meeting of March 4. Okay. Yeah, Felicia, I have a number of, non-substantive comments. I'll leave it.
Yeah, I found a mistake myself when I was reading it.
Yeah, there's a couple in there.
Yeah.
I sounded dumber than usual, so I was
Okay,
a little bit concerned, not much.
okay.
I had one thing. It was, I think, two things got mixed together, but I'm not sure if they're the same thought. So I'm asking other people here maybe to use their memory box. If you go to page 611, down to line 64, I remember talking to Ralph about the center curb cut. And then it goes into, that won't work because of the turnarounds. I think the turnarounds are making reference to, I think the turnarounds are just for the fire truck.
For the fire truck.
But I don't think they had anything to do with the center curb cut.
I think he said cul-de-sac, not turnarounds.
Okay.
He didn't like it because, or the reason he rejected it from me and you was he would have to do a lot of grading to put a cul-de-sac in.
That's right. There was more, right.
Yep, that was the issue.
I wanted, right, we talked about the center curb cut because that was existing and it would be easier for DOT,
Right.
we thought. But then he said, yeah, but I gotta do a lot of grading there to get down. So he did say he'd look at it, okay. So I don't know if we wanna maybe just leave it, I don't know. I don't know, we just said so much there, I don't know how we clean it. I don't know how we clean it up.
I'll try to clean that up.
Okay, and you can always send it to me and I could read it again if you want.
Okay.
No sweat.
Any other thoughts, comments? If not, is there a motion to adopt the minutes of March 4?
Motion.
Second,
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Mr. Chairman, make sure they're adopted as amended.
Yes. Well, actually, I think Greg withdrew his change. We weren't quite sure what his change was.
No, I
No,
think
she's
we're gonna,
gonna
I'm
No,
gonna.
she's gonna
Oh, okay.
rewrite it.
Yeah.
Okay, as amended then. Is
So I'm
that,
abstaining.
okay.
Uh, you're abstaining.
Wasn't here.
With him.
Did you read the minutes?
I read the minutes, I watched the video.
Then you can
can
vote.
If you wish.
You're abstaining.
He's exercising his right to abstain.
Okay.
Good, okay.
You don't have to.
Yeah,
But you
motion's
can.
carried though. Okay, so we had that. Now, we had this evening, and that's what caused me to think more about clearing and grading limit lines. We had an application tonight, probably a good reason to have clearing, grading limit lines. It's a conservation subdivision. But I've been uncomfortable over the years, I was in the minority, so I was voted down last time. But there are two ways of looking at clearing and grading limit lines. And that is obviously during the course of construction, almost everyone does that, if not everyone does that, make sure that areas are not disturbed during the course of construction. Some municipalities leave it at that. Once the CO is issued, it's done, and no more regulation of for clearing or grading. We often put clearing and grading limit lines, and the problem has been notice. It's one thing to have the owner and the engineer there, and of course, they know what's going on because they're the applicant. But 2 or 3 or 4, transactions later, these things are not well recorded. We are doing a better job now of actually putting it, I think, on the site plans, and so there's some sort of flag. But very often, there's no notification whatsoever to an owner that there's a clearing and grading limit line, unless they go down to town hall and say, let's see what the plans were in 1991. So it's a real problem, and we've captured some of these people, it seems to me, with some over-exuberant regulation. And I'm personally of the opinion that I don't see the need for government to regulate whether someone has a lawn, a swing set on their property, or leave it wooded, fully wild, whatever they wanna do. Subject to the environmental regulations that we have for wetlands and steep slopes and stormwater and the rest of the stuff that we care about and that we look at. I'm not going to say that I think clearing and grading limit lines can be critically important on certain parcels. My suggestion is, as we go forward on 2 areas, if we look at something that's brand new, I think we should look very carefully at clearing and grading limit lines before we impose them. Make sure that they make sense, that we're doing it for a valid public reason, a reason to protect a resource, to protect something. And then as we get ones coming back to us because people have been caught in the middle of a clearing and grading limit line situation, that we look carefully at those as well. I mean, I thought tonight's was very clear, they just rounded it around the patio. It isn't a conservation development, so those clearing and grading limit lines are more important than someone sitting on a 4-acre parcel in the middle of nowhere where there's lots of separation between houses. So my concern is that, and I've been through so many of these applications where people have come in stunned that they've been brought in, and they've incurred a lot of money, a lot of expense, and in looking back on it, I didn't think there was a reason that we should have the clearing and grading limit line post-construction on some of these parcels. We may disagree on those as they come up, but I think we really need to look at it, and it ought not to be an automatic. And when we have one that comes in that's been caught with the clearing and grading limit lines, I think we should think very carefully about reimposing them, changing them, or perhaps in some cases, or in some sides of the property, eliminating them. I have a real bad feeling toward it. I've been on applications where we have literally walked on someone's, done a site visit, and someone has a little tiny trail on their property and a little bit of lawn, they cut it twice a year, this kind of stuff, and it's a violation. So they have to come back and we have to redraw the clearing and grading limit lines. Do we like that? Can we keep some of these in here, some of the trees in here, some of them not in here? A lot of these are post activity anyway, but it's I don't think it's a good look. I think it's expensive, and I don't think it's necessary given the battery of regulations that we have available that we impose. And I think if we're going to impose clearing and grading limit lines, then we ought to do something similar to what we do with wetland buffers and put something in the field designating what that clearing and grading limit line is.
Are clearing and grading limit lines, I always were under the impression they were really established during construction to make sure the guys don't go too far where they're supposed to go.
Yep.
And then after the home is built and the CO is done, you would like to believe people don't go and clear cut all that stuff, but I always thought that there was nothing stopping them from doing it unless they were in a wetland area where they had setbacks from wetlands where you can't go in and start messing with the wetland.
No, we've imposed clearing and grading limit lines
So are they
post-construction.
are they supposed to be a temporary thing or in perpetuity? What is their
With
That's my
subdivision,
policy
it was
question.
we're supposed to maintain it,
It
right?
is
So
some,
this was the building envelope, this is the yard, this is the buffer.
and that stays that way, so.
Except it's hard to find, it's
I
unclear.
mean, like,
so-
like, if you went around in my neighborhood and asked people, did you know you have those lines, they're gonna, I don't think anybody knows they have them.
Exactly.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the problem.
issue, right?
And I don't, and I think people go and they move shrubs and they cut stuff out and they don't realize they shouldn't be, so.
Especially when a new homeowner moves in
Yeah,
and has no idea about this, and they get sometimes crucified for the wrong reason.
I mean, we have countless examples, and I think even
Yes.
you guys, recent appointees, have seen a number of these where
yeah,
someone's putting an outdoor kitchen and all of a sudden they realize that there's a pre-existing clearing and grading limit line violation that a previous owner did, and then they have to cure that before they can do what they wanna do. And, you know, again, if it's not in a wetland, if it's not on a steep slope, if they didn't clear trees, if they didn't go violate a buffer, or if they haven't disturbed the stormwater, detention systems that are there,
Yeah.
why do we care? Why are we getting our noses in this anyway to start off with?
I agree, especially, I'm gonna go back and look if I have a clearing and grading limit, cause I know between the residents on next door, I mean, there's a path that the kids basically have naturally created by walking back and forth, kind of thing, right? And I don't know if I have a violation. Dennis, please don't come to my property tomorrow.
That's like a deer trail, right? I don't know what you're talking about.
It actually has a 6 deer,
I don't
but like
regulate
from the
surveys.
development
You're good.
side, I was viewed as a limited disturbance, right?
Right.
We put the orange fence, right, and the guy in the backhoe knew he doesn't go on the other side of that.
Right.
It was a visual deterrence, but at the end, the orange fence comes out and, you know, unless if there's a reason to stay out of it, it goes away. And
Well, I'll give you examples where we've had, I think, valid reasons for having it. We had, many years ago, we had a subdivision application, and the applicant wasn't happy about this, but there was a gigantic rock, it was a glacial erratic. And it was this gigantic rock on 3 little rocks, and it was left over from the glaciers, and we determined that it was an important resource, and we said you can't disturb it, so we drew a line around it. We've drawn lines around Native American sites that have been determined to have been, campsites, whatever.
Yeah,
Not wetland, not steep slope or anything else, and we drew a line around that and said they can't be disturbed.
And was Hammond Ridge?
Yes, it was. Both of those were Hammond Ridge.
Yeah, I inspected all of those sites, yes.
You've also drawn lines around old growth trees.
Right? Yes.
You know, so there's been definitive reasons that you've drawn lines around areas in certain subdivisions. There are other subdivisions where there are now wetland buffers of 150 feet, and then there's clearing grading limit lines on properties, which makes it very difficult for a property owner to do anything on their
Well,
property.
let's be honest, it's just a theoretical line put on a map that there's no clear reason why it's there in the first place in the field.
Yeah, it has been, in my opinion, it's been more arbitrary than it should be. And what we're seeing now is, it used to be disturbing to me because we were looking at new subdivisions. It's disturbing to me now because we're capturing innocent people.
Right.
And ensnaring them under this regulation. They have to spend, I heard the other night that someone said every time you come to the planning board meeting, it's $4,000 between the cost of the paper and the it's not us, by the way, it's not us.
Yeah.
We're keeping those costs down. So it's I don't know if that's right or wrong, but there's a certain cost involved, and obviously there's a certain level of anger involved and surprise involved, and it's a bunch of people not really doing their jobs, which has nothing to do with us or staff. It's real estate agents, the real estate brokers, the attorneys. Someone should be looking at this, but they don't. And we've had so many of these recently, and
if it's let's say it's a site that's got some sensitivity to it because it's up against a wetland or a lake or a stream or something. And we would have the orange fence and the contractor would know that maybe on sites like that, can we put in the stones to demarcate? And if it's a site that doesn't have anything sensitive, then maybe after the orange fence goes down, if they go and cut down a bunch of trees that they're not supposed to cut down, well, they get in trouble with.
well, that's different.
That's a different thing,
It's the
that's a
tree
violation.
ordinance, right, there's
That-
redundancy.
Yeah, and some farms
There's
are,
something
right?
there to get,
You
but if
put
a
in
guy,
they put a split rail fence on the wetlands in Sutton Farms off Whippoorwill Road. Those 5 lots right there, they have a split rail fence in the back, and that demarcates the actual wetlands, and it was approved by the board. Those been up forever.
Yep.
The people out there like it looks nice. They never took them down, and everyone knows where the wetlands are.
And eventually that fence will rot and decay, but there'll still be some remnants of it there that
Correct.
people will know about, right?
And that went over very well. Those are very, very high-end houses out there.
And I think the ERB has been requesting more permanent markers in the ground, stones and boulders, et cetera. Again, it gives notice to homeowners, it seems to me. So my point on all this is that we're not gonna see that many more new subdivisions, we'll see some. And in some cases, it's gonna make sense to have some clearing and grading limit lines, perhaps post-construction. But I think we need to be sensitive to what we're trying to do, and we talked this afternoon, as we did tonight, when we had one, at least what we'll try to do is if it's a de minimis type of situation, we have to go to public hearing, so we go to public hearing, have a resolution ready, so it's one and done, they're out and finished. So to the extent that we have to do it, we'll do it, and we'll do it as quickly and as expeditiously as we can.
Did we require them to post the escrow? The $2,500 escrow?
For this one, we did not.
Okay. So I think I don't know if we can do that administratively or just where, 'cause to your point of how much, right, just to show up here, according to the application, they needed a $2,500 escrow, which.
We actually can, we have waived that in certain situations. You know, the example tonight, we waived it because they were so close to finishing out their building permit. But depending on the application, if we do if we think it's a one and done, meaning we can schedule it for public hearing and the first visit, we can, not require an escrow. The escrow is really required when we have to dig deep and have legal review and other staff review that are, people, professionals that are not on staff. So we can make that adjustment based on the application.
Okay.
And I think our staff is nuanced enough, and they know which applications are easier ones and ones that we're gonna put through very quickly and easy. It's another thing when there's a clearing and grading limit line, but it's up against something that's really demonstrably important, it's a resource, it's whatever it is.
I agree.
That's something different. But I hate to see this where people get caught in this.
Yeah.
And what I think unnecessarily. I mean, we had to go through the motions and make believe we were serious about the one tonight and get through it. But really it's
I mean, if we wanna even extend that, to be the friendly town, right? You made the comment about $4,000 to come back, $2,500 escrow. Even the 13 sets color, it costs a lot of money. They could do 11 by 17. If you guys feel you get applications that are simple and you wanna try to help them out, I mean, I know how much these sheets cost. It's $100 a page, right? And they do 13 sets. It adds up. So if we could be the friendlier town to help these people.
What about PDFs? Just get PDFs to the board.
I can deal with the PDF, I can just look at it on my screen and blow it up. I mean, now for Guri, for the other applicant, no, I need drawings for that guy, because I.
Yeah, we need to be consistent, so I think that, we can get you all, 8.5 by 11s or reduced sizes, 11 by 20s as opposed to the big sheets, we can be flexible, but we can't start requiring different applications, different submission requirements.
True.
What about all PDFs if it's consistent?
But we can't do that because the board just said they wanted big plans
Yeah.
for a problem application.
For some
that's a
applicants,
problem.
we need to see the big plans, yeah. I'm old, I can't zoom up on it as much.
I second that for me.
I'll third that.
I'll put the one and done.
I'm gonna back away on this conversation.
Listen, we offer any one of you, if you want reduced sizes, we can get you reduced sizes. But for the most part, we try and be consistent with the applicants because they all have to do it.
again, I think everyone gets the point what we're trying to do here. I mean, that's the issue, and I think we just need to be a little bit more thoughtful as we look at these clearing, grading, limit line things. So we don't, we minimize the impact and the screaming that goes to the town board as a result.
So like I took down my garage, rebuilt my garage, we put up an orange fence, but my garage had just had all grass around it. So once the orange fence comes down, I can still go to the other side of the grass. Yeah, I'm saying,
You can, but that wasn't a grading, that
Yeah.
wasn't what we're talking about. This was an approval that actually had those restrictions
You
on
didn't
it.
have that before.
right, no, okay, before I did, they just
Yeah.
put that up to protect it with the.
Right,
There's
with the
always
hay
gonna be a
bales.
silt
erosion
fence.
fences and
The
all
erosion
silt
stuff,
fences,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, you just have a standalone lot, you wouldn't want it with conservation subdivision.
Correct.
There's a big difference.
Whole different dig. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
that was,
there's a big difference.
Okay.
Good, okay, I
You're
just
good,
wanted to
you're
put
good,
that out. Good,
now we have to go to 2 members.
that's right.
Yeah.
Garage,
Dennis has
Tears.
already been to my house.
Yeah, Jeff's gonna be out there with these hoof prints going like this all over his trail.
I don't need, I got the ring camera with all the animals coming through.
Alrighty, is there a motion to close the meeting?
Motion?
Second? I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're all set.